Hey everybody, it's Aidan here once again, and welcome back to rFactor 2 as it's time for a mod review. Now today we're looking at CART. Now you probably sat there thinking, well, isn't CART Indy, or is Indy CART, or what's the deal with this? Well, kind of yes, kind of no, in that CART was the original American open wheel series. And what happened was in 1996 they had a bit of a split. They had the Indy Racing League, and that was formed based around the Indy 500. But this continued to race as CART, and they used the term Champ Car as the moniker for the machines that were used, and you've probably heard the term Champ Car a few times. Now this series was advertised as CART FedEx Championship Series from 1997 to 2002, and it was in CART, in this car actually, this red car, that Alessandro Zanardi had his massive accident at the Euro Speedway in Lausitz in Germany. And they'd had other races at the Rockingham Motor Speedway in England, and they did a couple of support races on the Gold Coast supporting the V8 supercars. Now unfortunately CART went bankrupt at the end of the 2003 season, and a trio of CART team owners acquired the assets of the sanctioning body, forming the Open Wheel Racing Series Inc. I'm guessing that's like a limited company here in the UK, and then renamed it as the Champ Car World Series, again highlighting the historic Champ Car term. Then continuing financial difficulties caused CCWS to file for bankruptcy before its planned 2008 season, and the assets were merged into the IRL, the Indy Racing League, and it reunited both series of American Championship open wheel racing. Now this split came about because Tony George, who was the president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, approached the CART board of directors and proposed this new board consisting of representatives of the series tracks, team owners and suppliers. And other people had become annoyed at the direction that CART was going in. They wanted certain expensive modifications to be made to the cars on grounds of safety and things like that, and people believed that only Roger Penske can afford to do that kind of thing. And the president of the IMS said that he was also annoyed that CART had sort of overrun his race, his event, the Indy 500. It wasn't the great American race anymore. It wasn't the race that stopped America. It was too international. It had pushed out the little guys. It wasn't what he wanted the Indy 500 to be. And the growing concern that there were too many international drivers, the resultant of Mansellmania in the early 90s, and George decided, well, you know what, I'm going to put on a second great American race, and we're just going to do it with NASCAR. So at the same time, we're in 1994 by the way, Roger Penske had worked with Ilmor to develop this 265E engine, which had one purpose: destroy Indy. And it was a 3.5 litre V8 pushrod turbocharged engine, and if you read the book Beast by Jade Gurse, it covers the development of the engine in its entirety, and it's a really good book by the way. It was so powerful that it blew the tyres off the rims in practice for the 1994 Indy 500. Paul Tracy's turbo would blow in the race. Emerson Fittipaldi binned it at turn 4 quite late into the race, and Al Unser Jr. won for Team Penske ahead of Jacques Villeneuve, and only those two cars were on the lead lap come the end of the race, and this was due mainly to full course cautions rather than the fact that Penske and Ilmor had built this absolutely godlike engine. So all Penske had done was take the rules and made the best car possible. He hadn't exploited any loopholes, he hadn't cheated, he hadn't done anything, he just read the rules and gone, hang on a second, I can have a 3.5 litre turbocharged pushrod engine, V8. Excellent. Everyone else was using naturally aspirated engines. So he just made the best car possible in the same way that Mercedes have made the best Formula 1 car possible today. They've just read the rules and made the best car with what they've got. Okay, Penske may have had the biggest budget, but that's by the by. So the following year, I guess you could say karma, Penske failed to qualify for the Indy 500 due to his engine being banned and the chassis not being good enough to go with the engine that he had to use in 1995. The Ilmor engine would actually solidify the split due to the fact that the little guy the Indy 500 was designed for, or George's idea of the Indy 500, was being crapped on by big boys like Roger Penske. So George resigned from the CART board of directors and formed a new racing series called the Indy Racing League in 1994, using the building blocks of the Indy 500 as its foundation. With its first race in 1996, the IRL initially included all oval schedule, all races in the United States, and mostly American drivers running 1995 CART spec cars. So they were basically bought from the kart teams that ran them the year before, because they were just going to buy the new 1996 chassis, and they were going to be the latest and greatest to be competitive. However, when it came to the Indy 500, Tony George shut out all the kart regulars from the Indy 500 by guaranteeing the top 25 drivers in the IRL a spot in the race. So if you're in the top 25 of the point standings, you were in. Regardless of your qualifying time, you were in. And the other 8 spaces were made up of all the kart teams and the remaining Indy Racing League teams. So there was about, I don't know, 20, 30 guys fighting for 8 spots. So CART just said, alright. So they went away and had a little bit of a chat. And the way that it was done was that George hoped that the CART guys would show up, get involved in some sort of first lap carnage fest, or have a failure, and it had a better chance of an Indy car, an IRL car, winning. And it became known as the 25-8 rule. And the exclusion of well-known international kart drivers from the Indy 500 resulted in a significant drop in attendance and viewership for the 1996 event. So, in response to names such as Andretti, Fittipaldi, Zanardi, Vassar, Tracy, and other massive names potentially being excluded, CART basically said, well, okay, we're going to have our own big race.
With blackjack and hookers. In fact, forget the lunar lander and the blackjack. Screw the whole thing.
And they decided to have that at the Michigan International Speedway and hold it on the same day as the Indy 500 in 1996. And the race failed to attract network TV coverage, and substantial promotional efforts were made to try and fill the estimated empty 1,000 seats at MIS. The problem was, nobody watched the Indy 500 that year because none of the top guys were involved, none of the top teams were involved, and nobody watched the race at Michigan because it wasn't at Indianapolis. So the race had a disastrous start. There was a 10-car crash, and it kind of hurt CART's credibility a little bit further, but the teams were allowed to bring out spare cars even though they'd already wrecked out the race. The race date was changed for 1997, so it didn't run against the Indy 500, but the US 500 name was retained through till 1999 and affixed to the existing July race at Michigan. So what we're basically seeing here is the racing equivalent of the Monday Night Wars between Ted Turner's World Championship Wrestling and Vince McMahon's World Wrestling Federation. And then in 2000, Chip Ganassi, who was racing in the kart series, figured out that, hang on a second, I've got a lot of money, I've got 2 good drivers. If I don't race in kart, but race in the India Racing League, then I've got a very good chance of winning. So that's what he did, and he won. He was using Jimmy Vassar and Juan Pablo Montoya as his 2 drivers. And in the 2000 Indianapolis 500, which he was basically guaranteed to be involved in because his car was so good, Montoya led 167 of the 200 laps to win. And it was humiliating for the IRL teams, with the Ganassi's team primary advantage being the greater engineering of the car. CART was very happy with this. Indy had just been crushed. However, the biggest winner wasn't Montoya, wasn't Ganassi, wasn't CART. It was Tony George. Because not only had he got one of CART's top teams now racing in his league, he'd also brought with them great drivers, a great team, some good sponsors, and a lot of fans. Top team, a lot of fans. They're now going to watch Indy racing. So the following year, Roger Penske, who was the most successful kart at Indy team owner, did the same thing. It was kind of like when guys like Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Big Show, Chris Jericho dropped WCW for the big lights of the WWF. And it lost CART a lot of big names and a lot of big sponsors in the process. To put it in a more modern wrestling metaphor or simile, whatever it's supposed to be called, imagine John Cena quitting the WWE and going to TNA. So the turning point for the CART IRL rivalry came in 2001. That year, CART tried to stage a race at the Texas Motor Speedway, and this came after the Indy Racing League had run its own 500k race at Texas, and the events became pretty big events. However, the IRL teams were using naturally aspirated engines, which allowed them to easily go around the 24-degree banking at Texas. So the CART teams were surprised when the steep banking combined with the car's turbocharged engines, it caused several drivers to experience dizziness and disorientation. Don't ask me how, I'm not a doctor. So At the driver's briefing, 21 of the 25 drivers said they were feeling dizziness of some kind, and CART was unable to slow the cars down in time to run the race safely. So the race was cancelled. So TMS, Texas Motor Speedway, tried to sue CART. And after it emerged that the CART officials had ignored requests to test the cars for safety and things like that, even though they were much faster and more powerful than the Indy counterparts, the two parties settled for an estimated $5 to $7 million settlement. So for 2002, Penske and Ganassi became permanent entrants in the Indy Racing League, and Andretti Green Racing followed for the 2002 season. And the Michigan Open Wheel Race, once the US 500, which was created to rival the Indy 500, became an IRL event for 2002 because CART had gone bankrupt. 3 team owners bought the remaining assets, rebranded it OWRS. Then that series went bankrupt in 2008, with the assets and history being absorbed into the Indy Racing League, kind of like what happened here in WWF, absorbed the remnants of WCW. Now, many names from CART and Indy have gone on to have success in other forms of racing, and some successful racers from other racing series have made it into one of the two series. And those drivers include Nigel Mansell, Mario Andretti, Juan Pablo Montoya, Dario Franchitti, Simone Di Silvestro, Will Power, Sebastian Bourdais, Jacques Villeneuve, Tony Kanaan, Alex Zanardi. They've all made names for themselves or added to their legend in these series. So, with all the history out of the way, hope you enjoyed that. The mod replicates here the 1998 FedEx Championship Series season, and it consisted of 19 races beginning in Homestead, Florida, and ended in Fontana, California. And the series drivers champion was Alex Zanardi, whose car this is here, and the rookie of the year went to Tony Kanaan. So, what's the difference between one of these and a Formula 1 car? Well, a Champ car was quite similar to an F1 car, more so than their IRL rivals. You know, Champ cars are much heavier than F1 and Indy cars, and Champ cars made a shift away from ovals around more on road or street circuits, such as Sebring, Laguna Seca, and the streets of Toronto. And by the end of the OWRS's life, no ovals were used. These cars have longer wheelbases than the Formula 1 car and were much heavier to achieve stability on the ovals. But the shift allowed the cars to become much lighter, but still ended up around being 27% heavier than a Formula 1 car. Now, this engine in the back of this thing, it's a Honda, and it's a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that puts out approximately 1,000 horsepower in 1998. By comparison, the F1 V10 engine of the same era had about 800 horsepower, and the horsepower in the back of this thing enabled this Champ car to regularly achieve over 210 miles an hour on ovals, despite the weight penalties that being heavier brought. Obviously less downforce than a Formula 1 car, and were recorded at the time of CART going bust about 2002. They were about 6 to 8 seconds a lap slower around the circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Montreal. Slow enough that they were slower at the time than the slowest F1 car, which was a Minardi, and they would not have made it through the 107% rule. So they're just off the pace of the slowest Formula 1 cars at the time. But now we've talked about the history and how they work, let's have a look at the model here. Just zooming in, we've got a very nice model. It's a port of a RF1 model. I mean, the textures are okay. I don't think they've been optimised with the X11 just yet, but I mean, we're looking at some pretty sharp textures. I mean, they're a bit blurry on this Kleenex logo at the back here, but not a lot to moan about. I mean, when you're in the car, you're not really going to see any of this, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, we're going to be driving Alessandro Zanardi's car, and we're going to go to Sebring, which is a track I'm not particularly familiar with. I've driven it a few times on Forza 3. That's a long time ago. Forza 3 on the Xbox. So let's get down there and we'll see how this thing handles. Okay, so welcome to sunny Sebring in Florida. We're going to be driving around an airfield. I'm just going to get straight into the driving. Not really going to talk about much about the car, but if you can probably see, you know, the level of detail in the wheels isn't quite there. They sort of resemble the new £1 coin. But it's an rFactor 1 conversion, so I'm not really going to complain. I just want to know, is the car good to drive? I have done some setup tweaks. I should point out this is by no means default setup. I've had to work on a setup a little bit here. Back end is just violent. So I've lowered the ride height. I've shifted the weight distribution towards the rear a bit just to try and keep the rear end stuck down. That's tighter than it looks. And if you try and get on the throttle too early, back end just wants to go from you. It's, compare it to anything else, it's F1 power, modern F1 power, V8 supercar grip. So you would have thought, given that I enjoy driving V8 supercars and I enjoy driving Formula 1 cars, I'd be an absolute beast in these machines. But I'm not. These things, from what I've got so far, the few practice laps I've done, so, I mean, getting the braking right. I don't know Sebring very well. This is the corner that I've seen on iRacing. Everyone drives into the next town before turning in. I'll turn the boost down. That should make things a bit easier for us. Coming into the final corner, Sunset. Almost Jimmy Broadbent when you need him, because he knows this place better than anybody. Back end wants to go again. Alessandro Zanardi and other former F1 drivers have said that these things are hard to drive and not as easy as us Europeans want to believe. Well, I've never driven them, so how do I know? I like to think I've driven them. Force feedback's really good. I'm getting enough messages from the bumpiness of this track, and it is quite bumpy. Get turned in all the way, and then here we go, straight line that. But be gentle. I apologise if my lines are all wrong. I don't know the track particularly well. Whoa! Just wants to spin the wheels, changing gear. Get the car as straight as you can before putting that power down, that's all I can say. Try and stuff the curves as well, they want to upset the car. Had a pretty spectacular crash in my reconnaissance laps. I'm sure there's an art to taking that corner as well. I've just got that corner wrong. I think that one's called Le Mans. My iPad's just flashed up with a video from Oxhorn, the Fallout YouTuber. It says Chinese Wave Defense. I thought it said Chinese Dave Defense. I mean, who's Chinese Dave? Why do we need to defend from Chinese Dave? Might turn the boost up on the back straight on this lap, see what happens. But the turn is great. It's exactly what I like from an open-wheeled car. Responsive initial turn in. I mean, the back end still wants to go. I've got to do something. Maybe it's because I'm trying to drive it like it's a Formula 1 car. It's not a Formula 1 car. Sliding wide through the hairpin. But I do like this track. I might have to, when I finish recording, go for a bit of a run in the GT. I need to get some. Well, I need to get the new GT cars. There's so much stuff I need to get for this sim. I need to get the UID prototypes as well. UID prototypes against the official 397 GTs. That would be great at Le Mans. Wow. Oh. Steering response is quite slow. It's... Again, I keep thinking I'm in a Formula 1 car. I'm not in a Formula 1 car. I'm not even in a mid-90s Formula 1 car. Sunset is... Oh, Sunset's a very difficult bend to get right. As we spin into the pit lane. That was lucky. Oh, we might as well put some new boots on it then. I've probably knackered them. You can hear the thump, thump, thump as I go over the joins in the concrete. That's really cool. I haven't made a pit stop in a while. 15 seconds to change these tyres. So, yeah, I'll tell you about the track. It's Sebring. It's available on the Steam Workshop. Hasn't been optimised fully for DX11 yet. But it's drivable, as we can now leave the pit lane. And let's go for it. So on this lap, what we'll do is we'll turn the boost up on the back straight and see what kind of a scare it gives us. I'll get the tyres warmed up first. That'll probably be the first thing on my agenda. First and second very long. This car's definitely not built for fast acceleration out of tight bends. Again, it's a phrase I'm going to keep using. It's not a Formula 1 car. Not even full throttle. Now I'm full throttle. Sure, as the track rubbers in, it will be a little bit easier to keep the back end under control. Reduce the camber quite a bit at the rear as well. That's something I should have mentioned. Just to try and keep the rear tyres as flat on the ground as I can possibly get them to get some more traction, but a little bit of a lift through here. Third gear. I'll probably stick it on the curb and then ride this one on the inside, get wide, then swing it in. Beautiful. Whoa. That's a noticeable difference in acceleration. Let's try a time lap with the car like this then. But like I say, you've got to let the car warm up a bit. It'll probably take you at least one out lap of a road course to get the tyres warmed up. I'm not an oval racer, so I can't really tell you how a car should handle on an oval. Empty box probably could. Wow, I'm name dropping a lot of YouTubers today. But Empty Box's History of American Open Wheel series is really interesting. I suggest you go and check that out. I'll leave a link somewhere to the playlist for it. I gained some of the information I needed to do the story from that. Oh, too late on the brakes, too late on the brakes. Too late on the brakes again. Back end wants to go again. I don't know whether I can hit the curbs here or not. That's the problem. Oh, what is going on? That's my favourite. Oh, fuck's sake. Right, let's try one more lap, shall we? Come on. Should you download this car? Yes. Even if you use it to learn how to set up a car, do it. It's quite good. Still work in progress, I'll admit. Some things do need to be fixed. Dashboard, level of detail on the tyres. But it's not undrivable. There we go. totally guessing my racing lines now. There we go. That's more like it. Now, normally in a new car, it takes me probably about 3 laps to sort of get a feeling of how it should be and get the track learned. Nah, this is going to take a lot longer. It's like, I know a V8 supercar, I know a Formula 1 car, I know how they should work, I know a touring car-ish. But even getting into it, I know how a touring car should handle. But these are difficult to drive. But a lot of the XF1 guys that went to America are saying that these things are difficult to drive. They're not as easy as a lot of people think. Oh, we've done a decent lap in it. Still got one more corner to go, though. Yeah, boy. I think we'll call it there. Should you download it? Oh yes. Yes, you should. This was the CART-Factor port for rFactor 2. You can get it on the Steam Workshop. It is right there. All you got to do is hit subscribe to it. And speaking of subscriptions, I highly encourage you to subscribe to my channel and like this video, and you can see a lot more content like this: mod reviews, races, cocking around in cars, experiments, whatever. I'll do it. So until next time, have a great day wherever you live in the world. I've been Aidan Millward, and yeah, like I say, like and subscribe. So until next time, goodbye. I totally fluffed the ending there, didn't I?